Hello and welcome back to the Retro Perspective series covering each and every issue of the official UK PlayStation magazine. This time we have issue number 9 from August of 1996. After the previous issue's report that Sony were to slash PlayStation hardware prices, it has emerged that software prices were also to be cut. As Sony seek to consolidate their position at the forefront of the next generation market, titles are already being reduced in Japan, and classics such as Ridge Racer could be available in the UK by Christmas for as little as £20. Now this kind of paints a different story, doesn't it, to the people who defend the continual raising of prices of games through the base price of £60, and then on top of that with all the DLC that comes out. But the fact of the matter is, and you can see of course by reading these magazines, is that there was a period in the 90s where video games were getting cheaper and cheaper, and that's where a lot of people you see nowadays with big collections, they started collecting seriously in the 90s. The only thing that remains to be seen is how Sega reacts to these cuts. Sony have consistently taken the lead in recent months in terms of marketing and promotion, and Sega have consistently had to follow suit. It will be interesting to see whether they can cope with similar reductions if they decide to follow Sony's latest lead. You wouldn't believe it, but the magazine actually makes mention of chipping here, which of course is against Sony's terms of service and would void your warranty if you were to buy a PlayStation and chip it. Dotell, the company famous for their action replay range of products, are now offering to re-chip your PlayStation so you can play import games on it, and pirate copies. The company already have a range of products on the market for PlayStation owners, including large capacity memory cards, but their latest service will be of interest to fans of RPGs and Japanese import games in particular. Sony are refusing to endorse the chip, however, and should you take up Dotell's offer, your Sony guarantee will no longer be applicable. Dotell will offer you their own guarantee instead. Here at Official UK PlayStation Magazine, we're more than happy with the games on offer to the UK market, and fully believe that Japanese games only gravitate to this country if they're good enough. Well, I would strongly disagree with that, and also, of course, you have to shill for your own country, don't you, really? There's another little flippant comment in this bit here. JVC have for some reason decided to release the Tekken tunes on a CD. Not an essential buy for PlayStation owners really, when you can simply load up the game and listen anyway, plus you have the added bonus of actually playing the game. And call us naive, but we kind of thought that was the point in the first place. Well, you do sound a bit naive there, to be honest, seeing as video game music is a huge part of what draws people to video games in the first place. Next up, the previews, starting with Destruction Derby 2, which hosts a slew of new tracks and character designs, as well as a whole new dynamic crash system that boasts that, unlike games such as Daytona, no two crashes will ever look the same. One point that many owners of the original DD made was that despite the tremendous collisions, none of the bits of the car ever became detached. Not so in the sequel. You can lose wheels, the bonnet and the boot, and obviously once you lose a wheel, the handling of the car will become extremely erratic. One major improvement in the game is that of the pits. Never was there a game that needed pits more badly than Destruction Derby. After a few minutes wrecking, you can pull into the pits and work on the major areas of the car. Dents can be squeezed out of the front doors and rear. We've yet to decide how to limit this. Obviously, drivers shouldn't be allowed to enter the pits as often as they like, continuously repairing damage, although any time spent in the pits is time wasted racing. Here is the first and hotly anticipated preview for Naughty Dog's Crash Bandicoot. Sony shatters the illusion that the platform genre is archaic, with a 3D creation set to take platforming into a new era of gaming. 32-bit technology is no longer a pipe dream, but a larger-than-life reality, and California-based Naughty Dog Software are one of the many third-party development teams to welcome its arrival. But what to create for the new Wonder Machine? Something inspirational and innovative, something called Willy the Wombat. Jason Rubin of Naughty Dog states, "In truth, Crash started life named anything but Willy the Wombat. We needed a name for the project during development, and came up with a temporary working title that was so boring. We continued to call the project Willy until we came up with a suitable name. Crash crashes through stuff, so... A vastly superior piece of hardware to anything previously available, the PlayStation is a machine with a powerful CPU, impressive 3D capabilities, and phenomenal polygon handling. How to do it justice? Naughty Dog rack their brains and come up with a groundbreaking idea of a platform game. Isn't this a tad archaic? Driving games and fighting games are similarly aged, protests Jason, but they've been given new life with the emergence of machines capable of handling 3D. We have to ask ourselves why these genres have escaped the archaic label and platform games haven't. Maybe because 32-bit platforming efforts, namely Mickey's Wild Adventure and Rayman, are simply glorified Super Nintendo games. There's always more to squeeze out of a system, and there's definitely more in the PlayStation. It's a great system, I'm proud of what we've achieved in relation to what's out currently, says Jason, but still concerns arise. What can be done to A. placate those disillusioned with the previous 32-bit platformers, and B. appeal to those who simply believe platform games to be infantile? Well, Crash isn't just your average platform game with a cartoon-styled marsupial for a hero. Those at Naughty Dog have ventured into the darkest recesses of their imaginations to come up with a truly innovative game that doesn't just tax the hardware's 2D capabilities. Crash is the first true 3D platform game. Sometimes the order the magazine goes in can be quite funny actually, because the next preview is for Lomax in Lemmingland, which of course is a classic 2D platformer. The basic notion behind Lomax actually came from a cartoon that an American TV company were going to make, divulges Mark Blewett, European PR manager for Psygnosis. The project never got off the ground, but the idea of having a lemming hero seemed to fit in well with Interactive Design's idea for a Lemmings platform game. This accounts for the obvious cartoon style which the game adopts, bold, colourful in-game graphics, with amplified features on both the enemy characters and background incidentals, such as trees. The main character of Lomax himself is a fair size too, a far cry from the 5-pixel high sprites of the original 2D games, and quite a cool looking hero he is, with a quirky personality that comes across in his exaggerated cartoony movements. Lomax is graced with the usual array of platform-based talents, such as an athletic jump to scale the plethora of rocking, disappearing and rotating ledges, while a gravity-defying spin gets him past blockades of bad guys. A nifty magic hat also proves most useful, bringing any opponent to a grisly end when hurled boomerang style. On to this issue's reader letters now, starting with David Forbes in Aberdeen.
In issue 7, someone had a complaint about their PlayStation going haywire at the FMV sequences. You babble on about a chip which handles the video decompression being knackered. I unfortunately had the same problem with my PlayStation, so I phoned the nearest official PlayStation Centre. They said to turn the machine upside down, and if the FMV sequences worked, which thankfully they did, then you'd only need a cleaning CD which costs around £6.50. If it didn't work, you should take the machine back to the retailer providing it's under guarantee. Finally, I'd like to know why is it that the PlayStation can show video sequences like in FIFA 96 and the Need for Speed, but can't show videos of movies?
In the words of Vic and Bob, I'm not sure how it works, but it does. The turning it upside down solution sounds weird, but it seems to be worth a try, folks. As for video movies, in theory the PlayStation could play movies if they were formatted on a PlayStation CD, but that isn't the point of the machine. The quality of full motion video, although better than many next-gen consoles, is not of a quality that you'd want to sit and watch films on. But then why bother anyway? There are plenty of ways to watch a film, but not many ways to play exciting games. As we keep saying, the PlayStation is simply a games console. The best games console.
I've read that it takes Sony 10 weeks to approve a game before it goes on sale. If this is correct, how did they miss the substitute bug in Actua Soccer? Also, how can dross like Novastorm, DEFCON 5, Psychic Detective and so on get released on time when something like Adidas Power Soccer gets put back. Sony says that they don't hold software back, but it's clear that they do. Take APS for example. You did your review in issue 6, which came out in early April, so you must have reviewed it sometime in March. I'm told the game won't be coming out until the end of May or early June. If this game is finished, why has it taken so long to get it released? I have a feeling that it's because Sony doesn't like big games coming out together because they think people won't buy more than one game at a time. This is rubbish, so come on Sony, get your act together.
There's a difference between approving games and checking them for bugs. It's actually the developing company that will playtest the game extensively, and Gremlin spent thousands of hours checking Actua Soccer. Unfortunately, the substitute bug slipped through, and although it doesn't affect gameplay, which is the important thing, there's currently a feeling within the industry that games should be even more rigorously tested. As for Sony not holding software back, they won't keep games back for long periods, but of course they're going to launch products strategically. They are a massive company that make huge profits. They're hardly going to bung games out as soon as they're ready rather than plan the optimum time of release, and it's naive to think otherwise. This is standard procedure for all software companies, with us receiving a review copy in advance of the sales date, so that there's time for people to assess the game before buying. As a rule of thumb, we only receive games for review after they're already in the shops, if they're crap games that companies are scared to have reviewed before they go on sale. Kicking off with a beautiful 2-page spread here, this issue's feature is all about Psygnosis, Sony's first-party studio that was also known as Sony Interactive Entertainment. Psygnosis have sold more PlayStation games in Europe than any other publishers. They're responsible for the single best-selling game in Europe, Destruction Derby. The Wipeout experience is a product of the firm's success story, and the PlayStation itself owes much to their knowledge and experience. They are, quite simply, the most exciting PlayStation publishers in the current market. And they're British. PSM looks at the best thing to come out of Liverpool in recent times, other than Steve McManaman? Steve McManaman? I have no idea who that is. Of course, a footballer. Jeez. From the console's launch in September 95 to undisputed market leadership in spring 96, the name of Liverpool-based software house Psygnosis has appeared on 27% of all games sold for the format across the continent. In the first couple of months of the PlayStation's availability, Psygnosis market share climbed as high as 70%. Even more importantly, games such as Wipeout, Destruction Derby and most recently Adidas Power Soccer have been vital in bringing out the power in the PlayStation, not just for consumers, but for other publishers who use the firm's products as a benchmark. Psygnosis now stands alongside Japanese arcade giant Namco, producer of Ridge Racer and Tekken, as one of the two publishers providing the software that makes PlayStation the most successful console in the world, critically and commercially. An obvious explanation for the firm's dominance is that they're owned by Sony, bought by the manufacturer in 1993 for a rumoured £15 million. Psygnosis were one of the first Western publishers to be privy to Sony's PlayStation plans. They even suggested one or two crucial tweaks to the console's tech spec, and designed the development tools now used by every other publisher in the world. It's also the consequence of a unique culture of creativity and commitment to technical excellence that has been honed throughout a checkered history dating back to 1984 BC, or before consoles. It's also just a taste of what's to come, which makes Sony's recent announcement that Psygnosis is up for sale doubly curious. The official line from both sides is that the publisher's work within the group is done. They've played their part in the design and launch of the console, and they've provided the software that kept players happy during a period when other less closely affiliated publishers were still getting into their stride. Now, say Sony, they recognise Psygnosis' natural role as a multi-platform publisher. They also believe that by selling up they will make a very tidy profit without risking any abatement in the firm's support for PlayStation. Certainly Psygnosis founder and managing director Ian Hetherington is pretty unequivocal when he says, if we were going to dilute our PlayStation release schedule in any way, we might as well destroy the company now. We're so heavily pregnant with PlayStation development that we couldn't pull away from the platform even if we wanted to. And believe me, we don't want to. Again, we can draw lines here to the modern gaming industry, where pretty recently Microsoft has been desperate to buy up studios to create exclusive titles for their newer consoles. It seems once again though, in this era of gaming, that companies were more interested in a freer approach to this, and more focused on technical innovation and creating great games. The ultimate Psygnosis triumph of style over content came in 1989 with the release of Shadow of the Beast. It was released initially on the Amiga only, something which at the time Hetherington recalls was a statement in itself. The Atari ST had at least 60% of the market and was the lead format for most publishers. We decided, however, that the Amiga was the better games machine, and so that was the format we developed for. We actually had to pay the developer double the standard royalty rate because he thought he'd get a far better return on the ST. Again, there was the criticism that Beast was all graphics and no game, and to be fair, it was, but it was also what the consumer wanted and what the market needed. On release, it was rightly hailed as the best looking game ever made, and not for the first or last time, Psygnosis software sold hardware. Lemmings was the antithesis of Beast, says Hetherington. Pure gameplay, and so different to anything that had gone before. Most other puzzle games, Tetris, Pipe Dreams, etc., offer fairly fixed logic problems. With Lemmings, the first thing that you have to do is to figure out exactly what the problem is, then you have to think laterally to get anywhere. It really was a radical departure for games. It was also a sell by the absolute bloody bucket load kind of product. So far, Lemmings and its sequels have sold over 3 million units on 27 different formats around the world, making it one of the most successful game franchises ever to be developed by independent publishers. The characters are even set to pop up in their own cartoon series on US TV next year. I think that part is either a mistake or possibly dated information, because as we learned earlier, the Lemmings TV show was the basis for what then became Lomax, and the TV show never came to fruition as far as I know. Soon after the buyout went ahead, Sony revealed the prototype PlayStation to Psygnosis, and the firm's real value to the manufacturers became clear. Hetherington found himself in charge of a two-track company. One team, based in London, published what he describes as a series of very average 16-bit cartridge products that were published under the Sony name. In Liverpool, meanwhile, tens of millions of pounds were invested in creating the largest and most sophisticated development resource anywhere in Europe. The aim? To create the best PlayStation games on the planet and to have them ready by launch. The reviews now, and a very interesting game to start off with because we just played this in the previous video in demo number 6. It's Actua Golf. Huge praise has been given to the motion capture and animation here, as well as the fact that Peter Alice, the voice of Golf apparently, is doing the voices, and the chap from Radio 5, what's his name, Tony Adamson, whoever that is. Actua Golf aims very much towards simulation as opposed to an arcade romp, yet you can play it much as you wish. The regulation draw and fade options are included. You can choose from a gallon of clubs, and there are arcs and grids to help the beginner. You need these too, because Actua is tough, even in amateur mode, well we know that for sure. As the swingometer whooshes round to the clicking line, the margin for error is slight. Whack it either side and the ball will hook or slice horribly. The commentary is quite excellent. Gremlin have obviously learned quite a bit from Actua Soccer, which itself probably has the best commentary of all the footy games. Peter Alice delivers the most relaxed of patter. He almost makes Des Lineman sound under pressure. Okay, that's pushing it a bit, but the comments add greatly to the golf. Actua Golf gets an 8 out of 10 from PSM. Whilst Total NBA 96 got an amazing 9 out of 10 from PSM, Slam and Jam 96 only manages a 5 unfortunately. Let's get this straight from the off. Realistic two-player basketball has no business being a video game. The sport is simply too negative to provide any level of excitement outside of a physical or team context. The whole purpose is to prevent the opponent from scoring. What's the fun in that? Any baskets that you achieve are taken as a given, and so, apart from the last quarter of the game, the majority of the experience consists of frustration and disappointment. Slam and Jam made its debut on the 3DO just over a year ago, to a less than rapturous reception. Crystal Dynamics obviously couldn't much care for the criticisms that the title received then, as it comes to the PlayStation largely untouched. What were those criticisms? Well, the main sin, and one which cannot possibly be forgiven, is the forced perspective. Whose pathetic idea was that, for goodness sake? The whole game is constantly viewed from behind the basket, which is obtrusive to say the least. If you're shooting towards the camera, you lose, simple as that. The perspective is confusing and of no use to anyone. Playing up court is actually pretty satisfying. You can see all your players, enjoy the slickly animated variety of passing moves, and the camera follows your progress up court. In short, the forced perspective absolutely ruins what could have been a quick and competitive game. We read a preview of Space Hulk last time, and it seemed to be shaping up really nicely, and indeed it has shaped up because it gets an 8 out of 10 from PSM. Are you man or woman enough to join the Blood Angel Marines and ply the dark vastness of space in search of hideous gene stealers to kill? No? Better just buy the game then. The game is played in two modes. There's the 3D mode, in which you can move about just like you would in Doom. There's also an overhead map view. Early on in the campaign game, there is a series of missions strung together. You're just an ordinary grunt and you have to follow orders given to you. But as you notch up successful kills and move through the game, you get promoted, and after a few missions you'll find that it's you giving the orders. This is done from the overhead view. When you switch to it, the game freezes, but only for a limited time. This simulates the sort of pressure you'd be under in a real situation like this. You only have a short period of time to bark out your orders, and inevitably, in the fog of war, some mistakes occur. It's only recently we've seen a resurgence of the idea of a hybrid FPS real-time strategy. I don't think it's ever been done perfectly, but perhaps Space Hulk is one to look back at. Sampras Extreme Tennis gets a respectable 7 out of 10. It's a faithful reproduction of the real thing, and it works. You can happily bash the ball back and forth, delight at the wit of Nicole Papin, and gape at the Russian stadium, but the game lacks a certain, almost indefinable wow factor. This is perhaps because of the plethora of views in which you can play. The one where both players can best see the court is most practical, and this means you're quite far from the action. Sure, the first person perspective is fun, but you'd have to be brilliant to progress through a tournament in this view. What we do have is a well executed sports simulation with some quirky characters, a welter of options and solid gameplay. AIV Evolution Global, much better known as A-Train, also gets a 7 out of 10. Unlike SimCity, AIV is based on the mechanics of transport, which go something like this. You cannot build anything without materials, and these are manufactured by factories, either in the corner of your landscape or off-screen, and ferried in by train. So before you can develop the more inhabited areas, you have to lay down tracks, build stations and material yards, then set a freight service in motion. Once your materials yard is stocked, you can go about the business of creating a more wholesome and enjoyable community for the populace to live in. Like us, you'll probably dive straight in with huge theme parks, towering office blocks, sprawling hotel complexes, waterfront condos, massive sky towers, and so on. Then, for extra stability, it's wise to link up the various population centres on your map with rail links, so you spend more money on grandiose stations and miles of track. But what good is a rail service with no means of using it? Aha, now it's time to lay down some tarmac. AIV Evolution Global is a thoughtful, detailed simulation marred only by a lack of specific objectives. Not quite a SimCity bester, but a good enough time filler until something else arrives. Now this is a game that intrigued me in a previous issue. The Aquanaut's Holiday, unfortunately, gets a 4 out of 10. What happens to a game when you take away a finite end? There's no longer an aim or a point. Developers of this game reckon it becomes an experience. So this is basically an open-ended game with a quite sizable map, in which you wander around in a submersible, interacting with various sea life, and apparently you need to build some sort of reef out of biomatter. The main complaint PSM had with it is that it's quite dull and there's not much to do, but this game still seems intriguing to me and I definitely do want to give it a go. Next up, Starfighter 3000, which is a part of the 3DO game. In terms of challenge, Starfighter 3000 really stumps up the goods. Even a decent amount of playing won't see it finished within a month. There are 60 missions separated into Cadet, Corporal, Captain and Commander sections, which are structured to develop a variety of talents. First you simply learn how to dock with a mothership, then you attack aerial targets, then ground targets, then a mixture of the two, and so on. Initially this system works well, keeping you within your depth. Unfortunately, the scope for additional training kind of runs out, and the game ends up chucking more and more firepower at you. By the time you reach level 14 or 15, the game has jumped from manageable to bloody vicious, and there are still over 45 missions to go. This, coupled with the tawdry visuals, make it largely unworthwhile. 5 out of 10. Also a 5 out of 10, Impact Racing, one that I've never heard of. Impact Racing is reasonably exciting in short bursts, but you won't play it for long. It doesn't look or drive as well as Ridge Racer, but you still get guns. So it looks like it might be a bit similar to one of my favourite racing games, NASCAR Rumble, which is a US exclusive PlayStation game. Collecting power-ups and different weapons to blast other players off the course whilst you are actually driving real vehicles, or at least realistic vehicles. Again, I might have to give this one a try to see what warrants the 5 out of 10. As always, we finish up with the top secret cheats section. This time we have cheats for Ridge Racer Revolution. I think Ridge Racer had a little minigame on the loading screen that was similar to Space Invaders, and if you shoot down all the enemy ships you can unlock 8 extra cars, it seems here. And this cheat here is just to immediately destroy all those enemy ships. We've got secret characters for NBA Jam Tournament Edition, stage select and power-ups for Gex, level select, keys and invincibility for Descent, all spells and more mana for Magic Carpet. I could do with this cheat, definitely. Level select for Need for Speed, maximum firepower in Shell Shock, and a few really interesting ones for NFL Game Day. Stuff like changing all the characters to skeletons, exaggerating the force of hits, greater ability to catch the ball, turn the sprites into giants, and a hidden level where all manner of things can happen. So that's it for issue number 9 of the official PlayStation magazine. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jake of the Retro Perspective, and I'll see you next time.